Hello everyone, we are group number 5 and in this video we are going to explain this timeline about the famous 100 Years' War. This war was a conflict between England and France that began in 1337 under the reason, or maybe an excuse, of claiming the right to the French crown.
One of the first and most notable conflicts carried out in this battle was a sea battle in the coast of the Flemish port of Leith in 1340. In this fight, the French attempted to stop King Edward and his troops from landing. However, they were defeated, so first victory for English navy. Though in the meanwhile there was a confrontation by land which was so ineffective that both kings realized that they had already spent all of the money, so they were forced to make a truce.
This truce lasted 6 years, until Edward renewed the war, this time sending quite well-equipped and paid archers, feeling confident that he was going to win, due to the success of such able fighters. He landed in Normandy, then in Paris, retired down the River Somme, and continued marching. On the search of the most suitable place to make a stand, he finally found it at Cuisy, where a new battle began in 1346. King Philip abandoned the battlefield, and so did the French army, though the next morning some of the French soldiers returned and kept on fighting, until it was known that they won. This time, France won, England won.
The next year, that is to say in 1347, King Edward, unwilling to accept the defeat, continued marching until he arrived in Calais, in the north of France. It took him a year to take the city, expelling most of the inhabitants with the intention of making it the continental headquarters of the English wool trade, something that would continue for 2 centuries to come.
From now on, we have a period of about 8 years in which several other events took place and were not specifically refined to battles. During 1348 and 1349, an epidemic spread all over Europe. This was called the Black Death. You probably have heard it, right? Yeah, you have. This terrible plague took the life of almost half the population of all Britain, not to mention that plenty of towns and villages were deserted and wiped out altogether. There were so many deaths that it took almost 2 centuries to the population of the country to rise again.
Okay, let's continue with 2 other events that took place in 1351, the Statute of Labourers and the Statute of Provisors. On the one hand, the Statute of Labourers was designed in response to labour shortage after the Black Death, in order to prohibit increases in wages. And on the other hand, the Statute of Provisors, which was designed to forbid sending the revenues of English benefices to the Pope.
2 years later, we now take a look at 1353. This year was crucial for the development of another statute, the Statute of Priminier, by which it was made illegal to bring law cases before the papal courts, or to bring papal bulls into the country without the king's permission. Along with the Statute of Provisors, they were designed to limit the power of the Pope over the English church and clergy. But enough statutes by now. Let's take a look at another important thing that took place this year. This was the Ordinance of the Staple, the other branch of the wool industry. The manufacture of cloth also began to make headway in England at this time. Edward III invited Flemish wool workers, who were on very bad terms with their feudal lord, to come over and settle in England. Englishmen learned from them the arts of spinning, carding, and weaving wool. The king further encouraged the industry by enacting that export duties should be lower on cloth than on raw wool.
The 8-year-long period of no battles came to an end when, in 1355, the Black Prince, who was the 16-year-old son of Edward III, provoked the French king to renew the war at Bordeaux through southern France. And the next year, 1355, in the north of France, both King John of France and the Black Prince intercepted each other near Poitiers, where the English army obtained the victory in such an overwhelming way that even the soldiers themselves were amazed at their own success.
Another period of peace, or at least of no fighting, began. This time it lasted 4 years. In 1360, by the Treaty of Bretigny, King Edward III gave up his claim to the French throne, as he had re-established control over areas previously held by the English crown.
In 1372, the Battle of La Rochelle started. It was a 2-day battle in which the English were deprived of the command of the sea, as in earlier times, when they were able to come and go as they liked through the sea. 3 years later, a new truce. From now on, the only parts of France in English hands were the districts just round Calais and Bordeaux.
It is curious that we have talked about battles, confrontations, and fight, but we didn't mention particular death. Well, it all comes someday. So here we have two very important deaths. In 1375, the Black Prince died. As he was the son of Edward III, he was to follow the line of kings when his father died, though he couldn't anymore. And as for his father, he also died. A year later, in 1376, who would be the next king then? His grandson, crowned as Richard II in 1377.
So, that's all for this video. We really hope it has been useful for you. Thanks for watching.